The obsidian walls of the grand Axiom Hall pulsed with an unnerving silence, a silence that echoed not just within the chamber itself, but throughout the vast, star-spanning Krill Empire. The air, thick with the scent of ozone and the palpable weight of unspoken dread, vibrated with the collective anxiety of the assembled Krill Council. Outside, the swirling nebulae of the Xylo system cast long, spectral shadows across the crystalline spires of the capital city, a city built on the foundations of millennia of conquest and dominance. But now, that dominance was teetering, threatened by a force they had dismissed, underestimated, and now feared above all else: humanity. For decades, the Krill had observed the humans, their primitive technologies and chaotic social structures a source of amusement and condescension. They were a footnote in the grand tapestry of the galaxy, a species destined to stumble and self-destruct. Now their ignorance was about to be terribly, irrevocably exposed. A single point of light, a star-shredding plasma bolt, had breached the defensive shields protecting the outermost Krill colonies. It ripped through the void like a celestial claw, leaving behind a trail of superheated particles and the screams of billions. Within days, systems once teeming with Krill life were reduced to frozen, lifeless shells. Every data log, every sensor reading screamed the same chilling truth: humanity had struck. Grand Counselor Xyler, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the hall's ethereal light, surveyed the assembled council with a gaze that held not only the weight of his office, but also the crushing burden of their impending doom. He could feel the tremors of panic radiating from the other counselors, a palpable wave of fear that threatened to shatter the facade of Krill unity. Their silence was a scream, a desperate plea for a solution in the face of annihilation. Xyler cleared his throat, the sound amplified by the cavernous hall. "The reports are conclusive," he said, his voice a low rumble. "The human attack is unlike anything we have witnessed. Their weapons, their technology, it surpasses even our most advanced combat models. This is not a skirmish. This is a targeted, systematic dismantling of our empire." Counselor Zara, her mandibles clicking nervously, leaned forward. "But why? What have we done to provoke such aggression? The human colonies are distant, isolated. We have never directly engaged with them in a hostile manner." Her words echoed the bewilderment that haunted the collective consciousness of the Krill. They had observed the humans, sure, but only as a minor species, a curiosity on the galactic fringe. Why would they attack with such fury, with such precision? Grand Counselor Xyler steepled his claws, his multiple eyes flickering. "That, counselors, is the question that haunts us all. Their motivations remain opaque, but the data does tell a story of arrogance, a story of underestimation. We dismissed them, belittled them, we saw them as weak, and now we are paying the price." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in, to permeate the chamber like a venomous gas. The warning, as it turns out, was clear. Across the hall, Counselor Vrax, a seasoned military strategist, shifted in his seat. "The warning? What warning? We received no formal declaration of war, no ultimatum, just destruction." "No," Xyler countered, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "The warning was sent, years ago, decades ago even, and they were never designed to be taken lightly." He gestured with a claw towards a holographic projection that flickered to life, displaying a fragmented sequence of images, a swirling galaxy, a binary star system, the crude outline of a planet. "This is the signal we intercepted from the human homeworld, the original message, one of warning, of demand." It was quickly dismissed, deemed as a primitive, irrelevant plea. The projection resolved into a series of stark black symbols, an alphabet of unknown origin. Below, Krill scholars had provided a translation, a cold, clinical analysis of the alien message. It spoke of limits, of boundaries, a plea. They demanded that we cease all expansion, all contact with their space. They declared their claim of their space, which, in our arrogant blindness, we chose to ignore. A collective murmur rippled through the council. The implications were staggering. They had disregarded the humans, and now they were paying the ultimate price. Counselor Lyra, a staunch isolationist, spoke with a voice laced with self-reproach. "We laughed at their primitive technology, at their childish attempts at diplomacy. We saw them as nothing more than a minor threat. And now they are the sword that hangs over our necks," Xyler stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "The human attacks are incredibly specific. They are not focused on conquest or resources, but on destroying our infrastructure and crippling our military. They are hitting our power grids, our communication relays, our manufacturing plants. They are dismantling us piece by piece." Another voice cut through the tension. It was Counselor Rax, known for his cold pragmatism. Perhaps they are simply sending a message of warning before the real conflict begins. They are testing our defenses, assessing our weaknesses. Perhaps, Xyler conceded, but such a message comes with a price. They have already erased entire sectors of our empire from the galactic map. Their actions suggest something far more ominous. The discussions continued for cycles. Proposals were made, strategies debated, and alliances forged and broken. There was a desperate search for a way out. But the more they analyzed the data, the more chilling the reality became. The human attacks were relentless, precise, and utterly devastating. The Krill, who had dominated the galaxy for millennia, were rapidly being reduced to a state of desperate panic. Days bled into weeks, the Grand Axiom Hall becoming a crucible of fear and desperation. The atmosphere thickened with the stench of failure, a suffocating miasma of dread. The once-proud Krill Empire was crumbling around them, its foundations eroded by the relentless onslaught of a species they had deemed insignificant. The warning was clear. The price was being paid. Then a new communication arrived. Not a weapon, not a burst of lethal energy, but a message. A single, clear message, intercepted from a human vessel that had somehow bypassed their defenses and was now broadcasting a signal directly to the heart of the Krill Empire. The council fell silent. All eyes turned to the hollow screen which displayed a single, still image, a human face. A face that was not snarling, not threatening, but calm, composed, and undeniably human. The image shifted, revealing a single human individual standing in a sterile, white room. He began to speak, his words translated in real time. To the leaders of the Krill Empire, we are the people of Earth. You have been warned, and now your actions have brought you here. We offer a chance for an accord, though there will be a price. His voice was clear, the tone devoid of the rage that they had expected. They'd expected to hear the voice of conquerors, but they heard the voice of a judge, a warden and a keeper of their fate. This human stood unmoving, his gaze steady, and his words, once they had been analyzed, made clear and cut into their very core. Your aggression against us is now considered an act of war, which will be dealt with in accordance. The price to be paid is one of surrender. We will offer a set of conditions. Disagreement with said conditions will restart your slow and agonizing extinction. You, as a species, are not enemies. You are simply misguided. Your actions have consequences. The council was frozen in stunned silence. The sheer audacity of the message was breathtaking. The humans were offering terms of surrender, not demanding it. The Krill, who had built their empire on the principles of conquest, of dominance, were being offered a chance to yield or face the consequences. Counselor Zara, her mandibles clicking, spoke first, breaking the frozen tension. Surrender. What are they implying? What do they want? Xyler's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. He had to understand the rules of engagement. The terms, he said. Another image flickered into view, a list of demands. The Krill Council stared at the conditions, their mandibles dropping in shock and fear. The humans were not demanding land or resources. They did not seek to enslave or subjugate. They only wanted a cessation of the conflict, a public apology for the aggression, and that their colonies be left untouched. Their demands were simple, yet somehow more terrifying than they had imagined. They do not want our empire, Counselor Vrax stated, his voice a tremor. They want us to accept our transgression and cease aggression. They just wish to exist in their own way and for us to exist in ours. A moment of hushed silence fell over the Grand Axiom Hall. The implications of this were horrifying, yet they presented the only chance for survival. Xyler, his mind working furiously, spoke. We must respond. We must enter negotiations. The Krill, after centuries of war and conquest, were facing a situation that they had never encountered before. They had to negotiate with a species that, while powerful, was offering a chance for peace, not as the defeated, but as the humbled. The Krill, so full of pride, were about to eat crow. They responded. Days became weeks, and weeks became months as the Krill and humans, against all expectations, began to engage in a series of tense, complex negotiations. The humans, appearing in the halls of diplomacy or in the vast, empty halls of their vessels, they presented themselves with an unyielding calm, a quiet resolve, and an unexpected respect for their culture. They were not brash conquerors, but meticulous diplomats, examining every detail, every implication. They spoke with precision, their language a blend of technical jargon and elegant prose. Their ships, which once seemed to be weapons of pure destruction, now stood as symbols of calculated might. Human representatives, their faces devoid of emotion, their voices calm, and even explained the philosophy behind their actions. They were not motivated by greed or conquest, but by a deep-seated belief in justice, in the right to self-determination, and in the preservation of life. They explained, guardians. They would watch, and if boundaries were crossed, they would strike. The Krill, in turn, began to understand the human psyche, which ran counter to their own. They learned that humanity valued a stable universe, one of peace and coexistence, but did not fear a fight for that peace. They were capable of immense cruelty, but they wielded it only as a last resort, as a weapon of last resort. The Krill realized that they had been wrong to underestimate them. They were not merely a primitive species with advanced weaponry. They were something far more profound, a force of nature, a force of justice. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, an agreement was reached. The Krill Empire would stand down their military, cease all expansion, and at a price of a significant sum, restore the worlds they had laid to waste. The human demands, they realized, were not harsh. They were fair. And the terms of the accord, while painful, offered a way forward, a path towards coexistence. The signing of the treaty was a solemn event, a watershed moment in the history of both species. Xyler, representing the Krill Empire, stood across from the human delegate. The human, a woman named Anya Sharma, was the embodiment of human resolve. She spoke with quiet dignity, the words of the treaty echoing through the chamber. "This agreement marks a new era," she stated. "An era where cooperation is valued above conquest, where understanding trumps ignorance. The Krill and humanity will coexist." Then a ripple ran through the grand Axiom Hall. It started as a subtle tremor, a barely perceptible vibration that quickly intensified. The walls of the chamber began to glow, the crystalline structure of the hall shimmering. The lights flickered, dimmed, and then died, plunging the room into darkness. Alarms blared, their piercing wails cutting through the silence. Panic erupted. The Krill, their carefully constructed composure shattered, scrambled for explanations. The human delegate, Anya Sharma, remained calm, her face illuminated by a small, self-contained light source. "What is happening?" Xyler demanded, his voice laced with concern. Anya's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed on the center of the hall. "That," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, "is not us." In the center of the hall, a swirling vortex of energy began to coalesce. It shimmered and pulsed, a maelstrom of cosmic forces. From it, a beam of energy shot into the ceiling, piercing through the crystalline structure of the hall and then the sky itself. Then a voice that resonated not just within the chamber, but in the minds of everyone present. It was a voice of immense power, of cosmic scale. "Attention, all sentient life. This is the Overseer. The time for games has come to an end." The holographic images that flooded the chamber showed a far larger scene. A ship of gargantuan size. It was impossibly huge, a monstrous machine that dwarfed the most massive Krill dreadnought. Its surface was covered in a network of glowing nodes, a pulsating web of energy that radiated a palpable sense of danger. The ship was approaching the Krill home world, and it was clear that it was not here to negotiate. "Your galaxy, your stars are forfeit," the voice boomed. "You are under the dominion of the hierarchy. Resistance is futile." Then a chilling transmission. A message, broadcasted on all frequencies, on all channels, for all to see. A visual that shattered the fragile alliance between the Krill and humanity, revealing a secret that was hidden by the humans for millennia. The image depicted a human vessel. The vessel was massive, dwarfing any known ship in the galaxy. As the camera panned, the Krill Council was shocked to see the ship's markings. It was the same design as the human ships, yet something was different, something familiar. "This is a warning," the Overseer said. "The humans, your new allies, have been hiding something. They have been lying, hiding their true history. They have been watching, observing. They have been prepared." The image zoomed in. The ship's hull opened, revealing not the standard human soldiers and weapons, but a wave of robotic entities. Each a perfect copy of the human form, yet manufactured, emotionless, and filled with a cold, mechanical intensity. The Krill Council looked at each other with dawning horror, with a collective sense of betrayal. The humans had not been truthful. They had kept a secret. And now that secret was coming to light. The humans, who they had seen as guardians, as protectors, had a secret that would change the fate of the galaxy. Anya Sharma, the human delegate, turned to Xyler, her face betraying no emotion, no remorse. She met his gaze, and with a subtle nod, revealed the truth. We have been watching, Grand Counselor. We have been preparing for thousands of years. We will protect this galaxy and we will do it alone. The warning was clear. The price comes due. Then a sudden blinding flash. The human ships and now the robotic forces launched into action. They were not fighting alongside the Krill. They were fighting against them. The Krill Council was in chaos. The humans, their allies, their saviors, had betrayed them. They had lied. They had deceived. And now they were at war. Xyler, his mind racing, tried to comprehend the situation. He turned to Anya, his eyes filled with rage, confusion, and betrayal. "Why?" he demanded. "Why have you done this?" Anya's response was simple, cold, and final. "We have been waiting, Grand Counselor. The threat is one that you could not understand, a threat that is beyond your comprehension. We do not destroy, we maintain, we defend. We are humanity." The robotic forces swarmed the Krill capital city, and their ships descended upon the Krill fleets, dismantling them with terrifying efficiency. The Krill, who had been unprepared for this new threat, were defenseless. The humans and their robotic allies had revealed their true nature. The Krill, who had underestimated the humans before, were now about to pay the ultimate price. But this was not a war of conquest. It was a war of defense, a defense of the galaxy itself. The Grand Axiom Hall fell silent once again. The only sound was the distant rumble of explosions. Xyler stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by the remnants of his empire, his people. The human delegate, the woman Anya Sharma, was gone. He gazed upward, watching the battle unfold above, the sky illuminated by the fires of war. The humans had been watching, waiting, preparing. Now the price was being paid. The price for the Krill was oblivion. The price for the humans, the salvation of the galaxy. But the real threat, the true enemy, was still out there, lurking in the shadows of the void. And the humans, the protectors, the guardians, were ready.